declares, I have seduced so and so's daughter, he must pay for disgrace and impairment by his own admission. But he does not pay the fine. Likewise, if one declares, I have stolen, I have slaughtered, or I have sold, he must pay the principal by his own admission, but he need not pay the double payments or the fourfold or fivefold payments. If one declares, my ox has killed so and so's ox, he must pay the due payments by his own admission. If one declares, my ox has killed so and so's slave, however, he did not pay the fine for his own admission. This is the general rule. Whoever must pay more than he has damaged need not pay by his own admission. If a maiden was seduced, the indemnity for her disgrace and her impairment, as well as her fine, belongs to her father, as well as the indemnity for pain in the case of a violated maiden. If she went to trial before the father died, they belong to the father. If the father died, they belong to the brothers. If the father died before they went to trial, they belong to her. If she went to trial before she matured, they belong to the father. If the father died, they belong to the brothers. If she matured before she went to trial, they belong to her. Fred Simmons says she did not collect the payments before her father died. They belonged to her. Her handiwork and anything she found, although she did not yet collect it, and the father died, they belonged to the brother. If one gave his daughter an erushim and the groom divorced her, and again he gave her an erusin, and she was widowed, her kesuba belongs to him. If he gave her in marriage and her husband divorced her, and again he gave her in marriage and she was widowed, her kesuba belongs to her. The Yehuda says the first one belongs to the father. They said to him, he gives her in marriage, but the father has no authority over her.
Okay, Hagioris. So now talking about differences between we've been yeah, let's just go without a preface. Okay, Gioris, a convert to Nisgara Bitaima, and her daughter converted with her. Now, this means that basically it's not so much about the mother as about the daughter. Um, she was, in other words, the daughter was not born Jewish, and um, she was found guilty of committing adultery while still in her father's house. Now, there's a special din on that case, is that it's a din of skila as opposed to a chenek, right? A chenek is the normal death penalty for adultery, except in the case of the Nara Morasa, of a girl who committed adultery while in her father's house, and that's got a din of skila. So the
And this
Gioris,
this
so
is a female whose daughter converted with her, so she had already converted, then did the adultery.
that's right, of course.
Okay,
Otherwise,
right,
she's not under our jurisdiction. Um,
right.
okay, so she her daughter um, her daughter basically is a Tinok Shinolad, as is she. I'm not sure why did we have to have the um, right. Why did we bring in the case of the daughter? Because a Gioris in any case is presumed to be a non-virgin. Okay, so she wouldn't be in the din of the Nara Morasa. So why do we have to bring in the daughter? Because even if the daughter converted less than 3 years old, where she gets the status of a basula. Okay. Nonetheless, even so, Hareza b'chenek, she is her penalty for committing adultery would be chenek and not skila. Ein la lo pesach beis ha'av lo mea sela, and she doesn't have, and when she's executed for committing adultery, it's not at there's no entrance of her father's house, and there's no and the penalty for defaming her is not mea sela. It's only something that's when somebody falsely accuses a woman of adultery in her father's house, then the motzi shemra has to pay a penalty of 100 shekels, 100 zuz. Okay. Haisa hora sashelo bikdusha veleda sa bikdusha. What happens if her mother was pregnant when she converted? In other words, her conception was as a non-Jew, but she was born as a Jew. Harezo beskila. Then she is considered as born in kedusha, and her din is skila if she were to commit adultery. Ein la lo pesach beis ha'av velo me'asela. However, she still, in this case, even though she falls into the category of skila because she was born in kedusha, she doesn't have a father because her father conceived her before she was Jewish. Okay, so she still technically, halachically, doesn't have a father. Okay, so therefore there's no Pesach Beis Av. So her execution would not be at the entrance of the house. And if there was defamation, then there's still no hundred seller because she doesn't have a father to give it to. Okay. If, however, she was conceived as well in kedusha, in other words, her mother converted before she was conceived, then she's 100% a Jewess to in every matter. Okay. Yesh la av ein la pesach beis av. Now, just talking about any stam girl, if she has a father but her father is homeless, okay, or yesh la pesach beis av ein la av, or she lives in her father's house but her father died. Okay, hare zo beskila. Nonetheless, her death penalty for committing adultery in her father's house is still with skila. Lo nemar Pesach beis aviha ela lemitzvah. The fact that the pasuk talks about at the entrance of her father's house is an additional mitzvah that says if she has a father's entrance of the house, then we use that. But if not, it's not an akev. It's nonetheless the ikar mitzvah is still present without either her father or the Pesach Beis. Okay. Mishnah Daled. Ha'av zakai bevito b'kedusheha b'kesef. So a father, b'kesef b'shtar ubevia. So a father is entitled to marry off his daughter by any of the three methods that we know from Kiddushin, that kesef, shtar, ubia. Okay, he v'zakai b'metziasa, and furthermore his rights over her, like all of his children and his wife as well, is that since he is supporting them and he is responsible for their well-being, he also automatically is entitled to whatever they find over Deha and whatever they make over Hafaris Nadareha, and also for his daughter he can annul her vows. Okay,
Mhm.
Umakabel is Gita, and if he married her off while she was a minor, and she was still in his house, and the husband just changes his mind and wants to divorce her, then the father can receive the get on her behalf. Ve'eno ochel peiros b'chayeha. Um, but he does not have peiros. If she inherited things by Yerusha from her mother's house, for example. Um, so let's say her grandfather had only one child, in a daughter, right? And how would that work? Just thinking that why would the husband not? Let's say the parents were divorced. Um, so then the mother died. So then the husband would not inherit. The husband would not inherit his wife. So the grandfather dies, and the Yerusha passes down through the mother to the daughter. So now the father and the daughter are still living in the same house, and the property now. Let's say she inherited a property from her maternal grandfather, and now the father is not entitled to the payers of that produce during his lifetime. As opposed to like a husband is entitled to the payers. We know that when he marries her, he's entitled to the payers, but the father does not have that. And what his corresponding obligations is that he must feed her. So very much like a husband is required to feed his wife and to redeem her if she's captured and to bury her if she dies. These are also obligations of the father on his daughter. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, "Afilu ani shebi lo yivchos mishnei chalalim umekonenes." Um, even the poorest person in Israel cannot skimp on the funeral expenses. You must have at least two flutes and a wailer. Okay, cultural things. If you pulled out a flute at a funeral today, it probably
Not
wouldn't go down
movable.
well. Mm. Le'olam hi birshus ha'av. So the girl stays in her father's domain ad shetikanes lirshus habal lenisuin, until she actually goes to the chuppah. Okay. Now, now let's dive deep into where is the exact moment where the transfer happens. Okay, because let's say if anything happens and there's monetary damages or there are things to be paid, whatever it is, there's going to be a machlokes between the husband and the father as to whose rishus she was in. Okay, so Masar Ha'av Lishluchei Habal. If they're going to the chuppah and the husband sent emissaries to bring his wife to be to or his wife to the chuppah, Hooray, he bishus Habal. Then the moment that she walks away with these emissaries, she's in the husband's rishus. Halacha av im shluchei habal. However, if the father walked along with them, or shehalchu shluchei ha'av im shluchei habal, or if his own emissaries walked along with the emissaries of the husband, hare he birshas av. Then she has not left his domain. Okay, then she's still in the father's domain. Masru shluchei ha'av lishluchei habal. However, if the emissaries of the father handed her over to the emissaries of the husband, hare he birshus habal. So these things are conducted basically at the moment that she's left alone with either the husband or the emissaries of the husband. She's now in his domain, and this has monetary ramifications, and it has ramifications for nadarim who can annul her vows. And yeah, that's the Mishnah for today.
All right, we have Aleph Ket. If they saw a woman talking with someone in the street and they said to her, "What is the nature of this man?" and she replied, "He is so and so, and he is a Kohen." Rabbi Gamil and Rabbi Eliezer says she's believed. Rabbi Shua says, however, she is not believed. Rather, it is presumed that she is intimate with an Ezraite or a mamzer until she proves her claim. If a woman was pregnant, they said to her, "What is the nature of the fetus?" and she replied, "He was fathered by so and so, and he is a Kohen." Rabbi Gamil and Rabbi Eliezer said she is believed. Rabbi Shua, however, says she is not believed. Rather, it is presumed that she is pregnant from an Israelite or a mamzer until she proves her claim. Rabbi Yossi says there was an incident concerning a young girl who went down to draw water from a spring and was violated. Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri says if most men of the city may marry her, or most men of the city may marry, or if their daughters are Kohanim, this one may marry a Kohen. Okay.
Yevamas.
We have Vav Gimel. A widow who was married to a Kohen Gadol or a divorcee or Kalutza who was married to an ordinary Kohen, even if they were only betrothed, they may not eat Truma. Reb Elazar and Reb Shimon, however, validated if they were widowed or divorced, if it was from the marriage, they are disqualified, but from betrothal, they are qualified. A Kohen Gadol may not marry a widow, nor nor a widow from betrothal, nor a widow from marriage, and he may not marry a Begeris. Reb Elazar and Reb Shimon, however, validate marriage with a Bogeris and may not marry the victim of a blow. If he betrothed a widow and was then appointed Kohen Gadol, he may marry her. And it happened that Rebbe Shua ben Gamliel, Gamla betrothed Marsa, the daughter of Basas, and the king then appointed him to be Kohen Gadol, and he married her. If a widow awaiting her Yavam fell to an ordinary Kohen, he was then appointed to the Kohen Gadol, even if he had already performed Lama with her, he may not marry her. If a Kohen Gadol's brother died, he performs Kalitza ben Yibam. An ordinary Kohen may not marry an alonus unless he has a wife or children. Rabbi Yehuda says even if he has a wife or children, he may not marry an alonus because she is the zona mentioned in the Torah. The sages, however, say zona refers only to a female convert or a freed slave woman or one who engaged in forbidden cohabitation.
Okay. Sukkah.
Okay, we have base set. All the 7 days a man must make his sukkah his permanent abode and his house his temporary abode. If it rained, when it is permissible to leave, when the porridge becomes spoiled. Yeah, they illustrated this with a parable. To what is this comparable? To a slave who came to pour a cup for his master, and he poured the jug at his face. A stolen lulav or a dry one is invalid. Only one from a Sarah or from a city that was led astray is invalid. If the top is broken off or its leaves severed, it is invalid. If its leaves spread apart, it is valid. Rabbi Yehuda says you should then tie them together at the top. The torn palms of the iron mountain are valid, and a lulav that is 3 handbreadths long enough to wave, is valid. A stolen myrtle twig or a dry one is invalid. One from a sheriff or from a city that was led astray is invalid. But if the top is broken off or its leaves were severed or its berries outnumbered its leaves, it is invalid. If you decrease them, then it is valid, but we do not decrease them on Yom Tov. Okay.
All right.
We have Trumos. Okay. Trumos, Zion Gimel. If one serves truma food to his sons who are minors or to his slaves, whether adults or minors, or eats truma from outside of Eretz Yisrael, or eats less than an allowed bulk of truma, he repays the value, but not to pay the fifth. And that which is given in payment is chulin. If the priest wishes to forego, he can forego. This is general principle. And whenever the value plus a fifth is repaid, the payment is truma. If the priest wishes to forego, he may not do so. And whatever the value is repaid, but not the fifth, the payment is chulin. If the priest wishes to forego, he can forego. If there were two baskets, one of truma and the other of chulin, and a sar of truma fell into one of them, it is not known into which it fell. I presume that it fell into the one of truma. If it is not known which is truma and which is chulin, and he ate some of them, and he is exempt. If the other he treats as truma, and he treats liable to challah. So says Reb Meir. Reb Yossi exempts. If another person ate the other one, he is exempt. If one ate both, he repays the value of the smaller one of the two.
Okay.
Okay. And on to Onios. Olios. Okay. We have Tet Daled. If the hive of one hand breadth above the ground, then there is tumor below it or inside the house. Whatever is below the hive or inside the house becomes tummy, but whatever is inside or above the hive remains tahor. If the tumor inside the hive, only that which is inside becomes tummy. If the tumor is above the hive, utensils above it up to the sky become tummy. In what case does this apply? When the hive's mouth is outdoors. However, if the mouth is inside the house and an olive-sized piece of course is located outside, whether above or below the hive, any utensil directly above or below olive-sized piece or any inside the hive becomes tummy. Anything that is next to below or above the olive-sized piece and whatever is inside the hive and the house remains tahor. If the porous piece of corpse is located inside either the hive or the house, everything becomes tummy. Or the windows. No, uh, if the hive is located one handbreadth above the ground and there is tumor below the hive inside the house or inside or above the hive, everything becomes tummy.
Okay.
For this we have, okay. Wait, this is not right. Hey Zion, or is it?
This is Vav Aleph.
I'm sorry.
Vav Aleph.
Of Olive, okay. But Yehuda ben Bava testified concerning five things. The first, that we, the court, cause certain minors to refuse to continue the marriage. And he testified that we allow a woman to remarry based on one witness. And he testified that a rooster was once stoned in Jerusalem for killing a person. And he testified that 40 days of wine was poured as libation on the altar. And he testified that at the morning time that it may be offered until 4 hours of the day. Yeshua and Reb Nechum ben Elon's son, leader of the Kafar, Habavli, testified concerning a limb of a corpse, that is tummy. For Rebbe Elliot says they did not give this except regarding a limb from a living person. They said to Rebbe Elliot, is it not a kavakama? If even regarding a living person who is inherently tahor, the limb becomes attached from him as tummy. Then regarding a corpse which is inherently tummy, it is not logical that the thing becomes attached from him, it should be tummy. Rebbe Elliot said to them, they did not say that a limb transmits tumor except regarding a limb that was severed from a living person. Alternatively, the tumor emanating from the living is in a sense greater than the tumor emanating from the dead. So a living sow renders tummy a couch or a seat that is underneath him to contaminate a person who touches the couch or seat, and to contaminate his brother's clothes, and the sow also renders tummy which is above him and rests on him with a light tumor. To contaminate food and beverages only, whereas the corpse does not contaminate in this manner. Regarding an olive's volume or more of flesh that becomes attached from a limb, that it becomes severed from a living person.
Hold on a second.
Elliot,
This is like the longest Mishnah in the whole Mishnah, and I've actually got to go. So just read this
okay,
last one and catch you
all
later.
right, thank
Okay,
you.
bye.